what if my kids, kick against what you're trying to do and teach, in homeschool?
Yeah, which you just plan on happening, right? That shouldn't surprise anyone if that happens, just because kids just do that. They have their agenda in their mind, things they want to do, and it may not mesh, right, super well with what you're hoping for. So instead of seeing that as a negative thing, right, even though it comes across very much like that, depending on the child who's like, no, I won't do that. um, you see it as a positive thing. Like if they had the words to say, here's what's in my head about, what you're asking me to do, what would they be saying? Sometimes that's hard to figure out right away. So it's an invitation to watch your kids and take cues from them as far as, okay, what are they liking? What are they, interested in? Or if we had too much screen time, so their creativity is kind of, not doing so well. So we need to back off on that. Or if they, or if we need to have a course change, for that kid. Or this happens fairly often when the seasons are changing. If you live in an area where you have 4 seasons or 2 seasons, maybe, this will happen pretty often during a season change, I have discovered. Um, for example, if we, across the board, again, we're heavy on boys, right? Across the board, if we have a winter like we're having this winter, which is just like so little snow, right? The kids are stir crazy, and they just, because you can't get out and just use your energy to play in the snow, right? It's so exciting, it's so much fun, it's cold, it's different. And um, take those cues from them. If they're just, kicking against so many things, maybe it's because you need to pray for a snowstorm or go find some snow somewhere, which is what we've done this year, to just, like change it up a bit. That's actually good for moms too, to change it up and do something instead of so rigid with, oh, I've got to do my things. It's liberating for us too, to just be like, all right, we're going to do something different today, and it gives you a chance to take, input from the kids and then ultimately decide what's going to work. You'll have those that will be, oh, I didn't want to do that. Yeah, I know. We'll get to yours another time, right? But also realize there might be a reason why they're saying it beyond that. When a kid is learning something brand new for the first time, it can be very scary because they're unsure, especially if they've been in a situation before where they've been made fun of, or something that they're not that good at has been like spotlighted. Um, you have to approach new things carefully then, because you want to overcome that attitude of I can't learn new things, or this is a scary new thing because I don't know anything about it. So watching for signs of that and being sure that you give some empathy statements along the way. Yeah, this is something new, and I remember learning new things, and it's hard sometimes. Or hey, this is a new thing for you, and let's see what we can, explore together about it. That it just helps them feel comfortable and not scared to try this new thing. Or you might have to find a different new thing also, because if that's not their thing they're excited about, then you just could try something different. Having said all of that, when you've got multiple kids, and you're hearing me say this, you're just like, oh, how could I possibly do that for each child? It's hard. It is very challenging, right? But and that's where inspiration from above comes in, because you could not intellectually figure all of that out, right? And so you tap into that direction from above that allows you to be sensitive to something that your child says or does. Sometimes when this happens to me, if there's a lot of kicking against it, it might be time to go just do a field trip. We did that this last week, and go to, the Museum of Natural Curiosity and just have at it, right? And watch them spend the time watching them interact with other kids, watching them how they interact with the stuff at the museum, and how they interact with me and other adults. And that is a good way to let them just have some, freedom to explore, and let you have some time to watch, right? The other thing is to have, and this kind of goes along with another question that happens when we get kind of burned out or tired, right? And I think we'll talk about this more, but it just comes up naturally here. So I want to just say something about it. Generally, if you can find something that your kids generally love that you do, maybe they really love to go on bike rides. Now, again, that's a seasonal thing, so you have to be careful with that one. Or sledding, maybe they love to be read to, have, maybe they like to sing or dance, right? And just have this, when I was growing up, my dad played the accordion, and I absolutely loved when he got that out, and me and my sisters would just dance to our heart's content. So there are things that we incorporate in our family culture. Cooking could be one that everybody tends to enjoy. If you're cooking, then it's got to be something, where you kind of get your hands dirty, full of dough or something like that, or chopping, lots of chopping going on, age appropriate, of course. Anyway, things like that you can fall back on, and again, kind of scrap the schedule for the day that you had in your mind, and hey, let's read this great book, and then just sit down and read the book. So you're not, you're just it's kind of a reset, and it helps then just kind of give a little pause, especially if you've been pushing really hard. We'll do this sometimes when we've been pushing really hard in the garden season, right? And we're all kind of, tired of, that's a lot of work, to harvest and then preserve and what have you. And, just like, okay, we're going to, take a moment and have a family movie night, something like that is safe for everybody to watch and uplifting, wholesome, that kind of thing, or read a great book or any of those things. It just helps give that little reset for everybody, mom included.
Yeah. Yeah, it can't always be school 100% of the time,
Yeah.
right? You have to have some separation, right? Even though you're at home and both are happening at the same time. So it's just like the age-old, issue of, work from home. How do you separate work from play at home? And you just got to figure out how that works.
Yeah, that's right.
I can vividly remember handwriting practice time during the, school, right? And they, I still know the paper, how it looks. You've got the solid line and the dotted line and the solid line and a little clock up at the top, and, with the numbers. And, you're supposed to start at 2:00 and go around and, end at some point, and between the dotted line and the bottom line, and then come down. And anyway, all this stuff to, learn how to draw or write, your letters correctly and the right size, and all this stuff. That was the pits. That was the worst for me. My older sister loved that. That was so much fun,
Right.
and just ate up every minute. But that was the worst possible time spent in my entire life, I felt. And anyway, you encouraged me and, attempted to help coerce me into potentially trying it, or at least doing it. But no, wasn't going to do it. And you were smart or wise enough to say, okay, that's fine. You wouldn't, I remember you wouldn't let me go. I wanted to go do something else. You wouldn't let me leave the space, right? But I didn't have to work on that. So I just sat there. I still have a memory, of relief that I didn't have to do it. But, just sitting there staring at, my sister's paper. She, wrote her letters. So I was still listening and, observing, it happening. I just wasn't physically doing it, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, her handwriting to this day is better than mine, right? She can write faster, she can write prettier, but I can write,
Right.
and do what I need to do. Uh, and anyway, that's just potentially an example of where you have this plan, right? And one kid is totally great with it. The other
Yeah.
one is totally, absolutely not. Do not let that happen, and don't let it come near me.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? How do you deal
Yeah.
with that? I think that's a good example where, again, most people looking, if they were just analyzing that situation as a fly on the wall, would be like, well, he's got to be doing something. He's not learning anything. Well, maybe not that particular skill, but I did learn, and just through observation, about at least how to write that letter or the shape of that letter or something, even though I wasn't necessarily physically doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and thankfully I'm wiser than I used to be. Because if that happened today, which it happens with, the younger boys, um, I would probably do something different. Yeah, it's true. I wouldn't let them just go off, right, and do whatever, right? Because then you don't know what they're going to do
Right.
while they're doing whatever, right? But in hindsight, I would probably, knowing you love the blocks, well, let's get out the blocks and see if you can make an A with the blocks, or the pipe cleaners, or something like that, right?
Right.
That would still, you're still looking at how the letters formed, but it's this hands-on kind of thing that boys just love, right? And girls too. I keep saying the boys thing again. That's because we have a lot of boys. Girls love it too, but they tend to be more apt to, and willing to take the pencil and try it, where there's or even just kinesthetic learners, visual learners, they really like to feel something. So if you've got pipe cleaners, or if you've got blocks, or something, Cuisinart rods, whatever, if you just have something that that your child likes, then they can explore, and try making the letters with those. There's still learning happening, and that's probably something we should say too, is there's still learning happening. We don't even necessarily know what that is, what learning is happening. Even if it's boredom is a good teacher, right? You're just there kind of like, well, I could do what she's doing or not. I'd rather choose not and just sit here with my thoughts, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Einstein was doing that all the time, and we see what happened with him and many other great people. I have a vivid memory of your brother, just younger than you. Um, he was downstairs in the family room listening to some music, and it was really, really loud. And he was little, he was maybe 7 or 8, and he had put on some great music and was listening to it. And I had this agenda in my mind, right, of what he should be doing. And I came, into the room with my with my agenda that I thought he should do. And I said his name, Timmy, and my recollection is he was laying on the couch, and he sat up and he looked over the top of the couch at me, and he just had tears streaming down his face. And thankfully, I was wise enough in that moment to just let him be, because whatever was happening in that music, something was happening inside of him that was far better than I could ever orchestrate. And I felt bad for interrupting it, being honest, right? So watch for those things. We don't know. We can never know what kinds of things are going on inside of them that make a serious difference in their lives. They can fill the missions that God has put them on earth to fill. And let's not get in the way of those.
Yeah.